something completely different. Eggs.
Sorry I'm late. Walks got really silly recently. Hello and welcome to This is Public Broadcasting. I'm your host, Captain Rutledge, and it's May once again, and that means one thing. Covering British programming on PBS, and also taking the mickey out of BBC America. Speaking of which, what's the difference between BBC America and a payphone? You actually get your money's worth out of a payphone. Anyhow, Monty Python's Flying Circus.
No, it's a link, though.
I think it was very good. No, it's the end of the series. They must be running out of ideas.
Monty Python's Flying Circus originally aired on the BBC from 1969 to 1974. The series featured many forms of sketch comedy, from the non sequitur to the absurd to the satirical. The members of the Python team responsible for the overall zaniness were John Cleese, Graham Chapman, Michael Palin, Eric Idle, Terry Jones, and Terry Gilliam. Cleese, Chapman, and Idle started out with the Cambridge Footlights, and Palin and Jones wrote comedy sketches together at Oxford. The five would team up as writers for David Frost's Frost Report, and later on Palin and Jones teamed up with Idle and Terry Gilliam on the children's program Do Not Adjust Your Set. Eventually, all six got together to brainstorm a new program for the BBC, which grew to become Monty Python's Flying Circus. The group saw massive success on TV, producing 4 seasons of Flying Circus and 4 full-length features. In the 1970s, the BBC had a deal with Time Life Television to distribute its programming in America. American broadcasts of Doctor Who were fairly popular with American audiences, but Time Life was fairly hesitant to show Monty Python. The Pythons themselves tried to perform in front of North American audiences on stage and TV, but to no avail. It wouldn't be until 1974 that Americans would fully embrace Monty Python's Flying Circus. The Python's manager, Nancy Lewis, made many attempts to sell Flying Circus to American stations. Commercial stations did not show much interest, but better success was seen with PBS stations, starting with KERA Dallas in 1974. In spite of any earlier misgivings by Time Life, Monty Python became one of the most popular shows on the station. So popular, in fact, that several other PBS stations began purchasing and airing the show on their own time slots. Just like with the Beatles 10 years earlier, comedy had its own British invasion. Fans of Python were born almost overnight. I myself was not alive during the original PBS run, but thankfully I had an English teacher who was... Monty Python, when it came on Nebraska's PBS stations in the 1970s, came at a perfect time with the debut of Saturday Night Live. On Saturdays, we grade school and junior high kids, since we were too young to be partying, would watch Monty Python's Flying Circus at 10 p.m., then SNL at 10:30 p.m. Just a wonderful time to be developing a warped outlook on life. What was fun was going to Sunday school the next morning, and there were always 2 to 3 people who would watch both programs back to back, and you could discuss what you'd seen. Here we were at St. Paul's on a Sunday morning, doing the pepper pot voices and blurting out, "Oh, Intercourse the Penguin!" but little realizing what we were doing. This was also the era of the portable cassette tape recorder, and my generation would record the audio of TV shows. I still have the Dennis Moore episode memorized because I recorded it onto cassette tape and then listened to it countless times. The show was just so wonderfully bizarre. It gave kids like me, with rather odd outlooks on life, a chance to embrace a brilliant source of insanity. And then came the studio albums, which, still are as funny and insane as anything ever recorded, and the movies. Sindelar, knock it off back there. Anyone who went to my high school would find that last bit slightly amusing. As Americans warmed up to Python, the Pythons slowly warmed up to Americans and PBS. During annual pledge drives, team members like Graham Chapman, Terry Jones, and Michael Palin would appear on local stations, offering support and sometimes filming skits, like this one for WTTW Chicago.
Would you like to subscribe to public television, or would you prefer a knee in the groin?
Okay, sure. I can't afford it, mate.
Right. Are you going to subscribe?
No, not me, no fair.
Yes, and are you a subscriber?
Well, not actually, you know. Yeah.
PBS airings would also influence the Python's film releases in America, starting with a re-release of And Now for Something Completely Different in 1974, and the premieres of Holy Grail and The Life of Brian. In 1975, the commercial ABC network took notice of Flying Circus's success on PBS and bought the rights to some unaired episodes for airing on The Wide World of Entertainment. Here's the problem, though. Unlike PBS, ABC can't air a full half-hour TV show in 30 minutes. To make room for commercials, shows must be edited down to 24 minutes or so. Also, unlike PBS, ABC must gratify its advertisers, so certain parts of episodes need to be edited for content and time. ABC apparently promised the Pythons not to heavily edit the episodes, but when the Pythons got a peek at the ABC broadcasts...
All right, Louis the 16th. Listen to me, smart. When you're king of France, you've got better things to do than go around all day remembering your number. All right, do you want to argue about numbers? No. Right, well, let's get hold of these plans for the Royal Archives.
Master, dirty red scum! Kick him in the teeth where it hurts! Kill! Filthy bastard Tommy! I hate him!
The Pythons were understandably peeved. They asked ABC to quit butchering their program.
Think carefully. Think. No.
No! That's wrong! No!
In 1975, the Pythons filed a lawsuit against ABC for copyright infringement and unfair competition against their uncut work airing on many PBS stations, along with a permanent injunction against further airings of Flying Circus on ABC. Although the courts ruled that ABC had no right to edit these programs, they were allowed to due to a loophole in the Python contracts. The final ruling was for ABC to add the following disclaimer: edited for television by ABC. It would be an understatement to say that the Pythons were disappointed about the court ruling. In 1980, their contracts with the BBC expired, and they were soon able to purchase the rights to Flying Circus. As a result, many PBS stations in the 80s gradually lost broadcast rights for Flying Circus. Sure, folks could still watch the movies and listen to the albums, but there was no definitive platform for viewing the same shows as on PBS. However, in 2006, Python returned to PBS with their personal best. Over 6 episodes, the 5 surviving members of Python shared their favorite moments from the 45 episodes of Flying Circus and had a special tribute episode to the deceased member, Graham Chapman. These episodes were more than just a normal compilation, but rather a tribute to each Python performer. The highlight of each episode, though, is not the sketches themselves, but rather all the tomfoolery the Pythons engage in for wraparound segments. We see a reporter interviewing a Nazi about Eric Idle, John Cleese dies of a heart attack during his interview, Terry Gilliam was a cartoon all along, Michael Palin is really an expert on fish slapping, and Terry Jones claims that he was the true star all along. This, viewers, was how I was formally introduced to Monty Python. And like certain English teachers who grew up in the 70s, I felt as if my eyes were open to a whole new different brand of comedy, and I was on the floor several times dying of laughter. Consequently, people viewed me as a complete weirdo when reenacting sketches, but you can't have everything. When Monty Python's Flying Circus came on PBS, it not only proved British comedy could work in America, but it also changed American comedy for the better. Just after its premiere on PBS, Saturday Night Live tried out a similar formula on NBC, and modern-day comedians like David Hyde Pierce, Jimmy Fallon, and the creators of South Park took inspiration from the antics of 5 crazy Oxbridge grads and an American draft dodger. You can find snippets of Monty Python sketches all over the internet, so feel free to check them out for yourself. You'll certainly not be disappointed. And, once again, it is time for the PBS member station Spotlight. So we've been going all over the country, from California to Rhode Island, Wyoming to Texas. It's time once again to draw a new station out of the pretty straw hat. So let's see what we can pick up here. Oh, here's one. And we're heading to our nation's capital with WETA TV, Washington, D.C. WETA TV was one of the first public TV stations in the United States, signing on the air in 1961 on Channel 26, under direction of the Greater Washington Educational Television Association. In 1964, station operations moved to Howard University, and the station joined the National Educational Television Network, which later became PBS in 1968. In 1992, the station aired the first over-the-air HD TV signal in the U.S., and in 2002, it became one of the first stations in the country to offer digital sub-channels. Today, WETA TV serves as a main PBS and public television member station for the greater D.C. area, and has produced several national PBS and American public television programs, including Washington Week, the Kennedy Center Honors, the Capitol Fourth and the National Memorial Day Concert, and the documentaries of Ken Burns, along with collaborating with WNET New York, KQED San Francisco, KTEC St. Louis, and WTTW Chicago on the PBS NewsHour. If you're in the greater DC area, you can tune in to WETA on Channel 26, with WETA UK on the .2 channel, WETA Kids on the .3 channel, and a standard definition broadcast on the .4 channel. Well, thank you to everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, feel free to like, subscribe, and share, leave a comment below, follow on Twitter, and also don't forget to support your local PBS station so more programs related to Monty Python's Flying Circus can find their way to your TV screens. Well, that about wraps it up. And once again, for This is Public Broadcasting, I'm Captain Rutledge. Good day.
I didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the oh, bugger!